Man, this is always awesome using a microphone in a small room. But this is perfect. Hey, so I was actually supposed to be teaching everyone today what portable church looks like, and I'm sure there are people in this room that know more about portable church than I ever do, because we haven't started our church yet. So Pastor Danny actually asked me to talk about this idea of assimilating onto a team. And so I wrote everything out, had these like guidelines as to what that actually looks like. And then last night, I was actually talking with my wife, and we were going through everything. And kind of the idea of what I'm talking about today took a little bit of a turn. And the title was The Process of Assimilation. And now I've retitled it to The Process of Authentic Assimilation. Because I think that I could teach you guys some of the things that I've done and that I've learned along the way. And you could write that down, and when the time came for you to assimilate onto another team, like you could take those notes out, follow that, and hopefully it would help you. But I think if you wait until that point to start utilizing some of these tools, you've waited way too long. And the reality is that we need to be authentic in who God has created us to be today, right now. And so my goal today is, just to teach you really what you are supposed to be and who you're supposed to be, and that is the authentic you. Assimilation is this, the definition is the process by which different cultural groups become more and more alike. When full assimilation is complete, there's no distinguishable difference between the formerly different groups. And I thought about that, and I was like, man, that sounds really good and really pretty. But I think when it comes to the body of Christ, I think that there should be a difference, right? We shouldn't just try to blend in to what everybody else is doing. The Bible articulates and kind of describes who we are as the body of Christ. So that means that some of us might be the hands, some might be the feet, some might be the butt, some might be the armpit. We all play different parts in the body of Christ. And so we're not supposed to blend into what everybody else is doing. But we can take some of the positives that come with the new culture that you maybe find yourself in and blend that with the person of who you are, right? And assimilate those two processes together. Let me ask you this. Who are all first years in here? Perfect. Second years? Okay, awesome. Wow. So this is a 2-year process. And I'm sure all of our Y2s in here are going like, I think about that every single day of my life. Every day that I wake up, I'm wondering, what are we going to do in the next few months? What am I going to be doing? Where am I going? Some of you maybe already have an idea as to what that looks like. But some of you might be going like, I literally have no clue. And some of you Y1s in here, maybe it's the same for you. Years go by really fast at this age. When I was a kid, man, it seemed like years took forever. But now it's like they just start flying by. So you don't have a lot of time to figure out where you're going to next and what you're going to do next. So today, my goal is to help you learn the art of authentic assimilation. In 2010, I got a chance to go to Africa, and we actually went to Nairobi. And when we flew in to the airport, it was actually on a reserve. And so there's all of these like elephants and wildlife, giraffes, zebra, you name it, just like running beneath the plane. And like you could almost hear the whole Lion King theme song playing. Like it was awesome. And we got off the plane, we get into these Jeeps, we load up and we drive off about 2 or 3 hours away in these Jeeps in the bush. There's literally nothing out there. We drive up to this campsite that's surrounded by 3 strands of barbed wire. And they have tents set up that we're now going to be sleeping in for the next 3 weeks. And they had a fire that was constantly going. They constantly kept the fire going because they said if the fire burns out at night, we're all going to get eaten alive. And not only that, but it was also the migrating season. And so at night, you could shine your flashlight out, and literally within maybe, 500 yards or so, you just see eyes everywhere. They're surrounding you. And it's all the zebra and wildebeest and all of the animals that are migrating. But then you start thinking like, oh great, if these guys are out here, then that also means that the prey is out here as well, and we're all about to get eaten. And so they would keep this fire going, and at night, we would all kind of do our kumbaya and eat dinner and talk about the events that happened throughout the day. And then the guards that were kind of protecting our camp would go out and they would hunt for our food for the next day. 3 days in, me and my buddy's like, we've got to go on one of these hunts with these guys. Like, we've got to. So we go and we talk to the missionaries over there, and we said, could we go on one of these hunts? And they said, yeah, you can go. You know, with these two guys, they'll take you out there. They're not going to do anything dangerous, but you can go hunt with them. And so that's what we did. They gave us what they call a rungu, which is it's kind of like a root that has a ball on the end, and they would throw this thing ground level, and it would hit the knees of whatever animal they were hunting, and then they would go up and club this thing to death. So they gave us one of those, and I felt really protected with that. It was incredible. And then they gave us a spear. So we had a rungu and a spear. So if anything came, like, we were prepared, we were ready. And so me and my buddy, we go out. We have one flashlight, and the kind of leaders are using the flashlight. We're passing these hyena dens, like holes in the ground where there's no hyenas in there, but like, you know, they sleep there. And we're passing this, and like, we're walking out in Africa in the pitch black. All we have is this flashlight. And so all of a sudden, the guys, they couldn't speak English. They couldn't speak a lick of English. We couldn't speak their language. So like, we're making big movements and like trying to figure out how to communicate with one another. They grabbed us and they pulled us on the ground. They turned the flashlight out and they said, elephants, elephants. And all we knew is that the elephants were the second most dangerous animal in all of Africa because of how aggressive they are. If you get in their territory, they're charging you and they're not stopping until you're done or until you're out of their territory. So they kept shining the light, and like maybe 100 yards out, we see these two eyes up in the sky, and they keep saying, elephants. Next thing we know, they take off running towards this elephant. And me and my buddy, we're left in the dark, and we have a decision to make. Like, do we stay in the dark and get eaten alive, or do we chase these guys and try to take down this big elephant? So we took off running. We chased these guys, and we were following after this flashlight, hiding behind these little shrubs, and we finally get up to it. They bust out laughing, and it was two monkeys in the top of a tree. And that's what our elephant was. And so we were like, you know, nerves racing. We get out there, and they take a spear, and at the top of this tree where these monkeys were, there was also a dove, like a bird up there. And they take this spear, and the trees in Africa are not very tall at all, but they take the spear and they chunked it, hit this dove out of the top of this tree. I'm not lying to you, it was incredible. Hit this dove, it falls down on the ground, and we like are celebrating because this was the biggest kill yet of our Africa experience. We take this dove, and me and my buddy wipe the blood of this dove. Like, we're warriors, right? We're coming back from battle. We wipe the blood all over our face. And these dudes are looking at us like, you have lost your mind, like freaking out a little bit. But we wipe the blood all over. We get back to camp, and we walk up in camp. We're like, yeah, we're holding our little dove up like we did something. And all of a sudden, all of the Africans that were there, they start just looking around like, hide your kids, like, what's going on? And the missionaries run out, and they said, what are you doing? Come here. And they wiped the blood off of our face. The reason why everybody was freaking out was because the witch doctors would put blood on their face, go into campsites, and steal all of the babies and take them away with them. And we come walking in with blood all over our face like we did something. And it was in that moment that I'm going, okay, these two cultures are colliding, right? Like, so my point in telling you that story is simply this. When assimilating into a new group, it's important to understand when you have blood on your forehead and quickly make adjustments. Quickly make adjustments while maintaining complete authenticity, right? So you don't have to necessarily write everything that I'm telling you down. Hopefully my heart comes across in this, and you're not so busy taking notes that you miss out on the heart of this message. But when assimilating into a new group, it's important to understand when you have blood on your forehead and quickly make adjustments while maintaining complete authenticity. Saying that to say this, you're going to go into, maybe some of you, into a new church, into a new business, into a new organization. And the way that you have been doing things and what seems completely natural to you may not be completely natural to the organization that you're working with or the church that you're working with. And so you have to quickly make adjustments, because if you keep doing the same thing that you've been doing, that's not going to fly maybe in this new church or this new organization. But you also have to maintain complete authenticity. We live in a society that dictates who we need to be, what we need to wear, how we need to talk, and we have lost the art of authenticity. In losing the art of authenticity, we have settled for a stress-induced, insecure, ineffective life. And hopefully you hear my heart today, because I was this guy that for years and years and years, I tried to be someone that I was not. And I grew up in the day and age of or I was started out in ministry in the day and age when Instagram and social media and Facebook and all of that was, at its peak. For us, we're going like, oh, now we can see what other ministries are doing. This is what effective ministry looks like. Or this is what effective Christianity looks like. And we're looking and scrolling through picture after picture after picture. And I tried to model my ministry and I tried to model my life off of people's highlight reel, that I only got to see the pictures that they posted that got all the likes, that got all the fame, that got all the glory. And I tried to live my life based off of that. And let me tell you, it was the most stressful years of my life. The most stressful years of my life, because I wasn't operating in the authentic me that God created me to be. It was this highlight reel. I saw what others wanted me to see. I didn't get to see the behind the scenes of their life. I only got to see what got them likes and followers. And if I had to guess, I think I'm pretty certain that we've all experienced this at some point in our lives along the way. But God never intended you to fit the mold that was created for someone else. In fact, He tailor-made you to be unique and effective in His purposes. And if you're not living the life that God created you to live, you're not fulfilling the purpose in which He set you on this planet to do, to fulfill. And so when we begin to live our lives in such a way, it brings this overwhelming freedom that you don't have to be somebody that you're not. If you fill the mold that was given to you, God can and will use you, the real you, the you that was created to fill His purposes. So today my goal is not to give you these catchy one-liners that you can write down and steal for a message later, right? Like, that's not my goal. My goal is not even to keep you for a full hour. My goal is to articulate my heart in this idea of authenticity. And hopefully you walk out of this room today and you start living the life that you were created to live, and not have this added weight and pressure of trying to fulfill someone else's purpose and someone else's ideas. So with all of that said, I'm trying to combine what I originally had with what I feel God is kind of leading me to say today. And so I want you guys to take some practicals of this, and when you leave, maybe there's some things that you didn't think of when going into a new organization or a new job. So the first thing is this. I want to give this quote. One of my favorite quotes ever is from Maria Williamson. It says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We were all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in every one of us. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others." I love that quote, because it's this idea of, I think that the fear that she's talking about a lot of times is this idea that we don't measure up to other people, right? That's one of my biggest fears, is I don't measure up. Like, I won't ever amount to anything. I'll never do anything successful with my life. Like, that is the underlying fear that has been a part of my life. But when we start living the life that God created us to live, it automatically liberates other people to live the life that they were intended to live. Every single one of us can spot authenticity, right? We can spot a fake, and we can spot genuine people. It's easy to spot, it's hard to live. It's easy to spot, but it's really, really hard to live. And I could stand here all day and we could talk about this idea of authenticity. And so that's why I'm having trouble kind of wrapping my brain around this, because I know what has worked for me leading up to this point. I know what didn't work for me. And so that's my goal, is to try to articulate this. So when you leave this place, going into the work field, wherever that may be, some of you, who feels called to ministry? Like, I feel like ministry is going to be the thing that God uses me. What about the workplace? And again, there's not a separation between workplace and ministry, but in the workplace ministry, who feels like that's what you're going to do? Perfect. That's awesome. leaving here, going into whatever opportunity that God leads you into, it starts from the first impression. It starts from the first impression. Your first impression, a lot of times, is your resume, right? And I think that some of you guys have already started working on resumes with Pastor Danny, right? Is that a thing? So it starts with your resume. So the question is, do you have a resume? And if you wait till the last minute, you've waited too long. Do you have a resume? What does it look like, and does it stand out? I just got back from Dallas, Texas, where I was at a church of about 12,000 people that would meet on Sunday. And when I was going into this job, I'm coming from a youth ministry and a church of about 2,000 people to a church of 12,000 people. And I'm going, what do I have to offer these people that they can't find in someone else? And so I sat down and I started writing out my resume and started figuring out what I wanted to put on there, what I wanted it to look like. I spent so much time and so much energy, and later found out that it paid off for me, because there were about I think they said 15 applications that came in for the job that I was applying for, which was the Connections Pastor role. And they said that I made it primarily because of my resume. So all of these other people, a lot of them, they didn't even really give them a chance. They would read through their resume, next. They came to mine and they said, wait a second, this stands out above the rest. We want to give this guy a shot. Lo and behold, had the interview, made it through. And I think a big reason why I made it through was because I went in there and I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna be someone that I'm not, because I just lived the past 4 years of my life doing student ministry with this added weight and pressure of trying to be someone that I wasn't. So I'm gonna go into this thing and I'm gonna let it be the real, authentic me. And if they hire me, they wanted me for the job, not someone that I perceived to be or projected to be. And so what does it look like? Does it stand out? I would say this: invest the time, money, and effort into making your first impressions the best that it can possibly be. If you aren't creative, find someone who's creative. This is an important step in the right direction. Your resume can and should put you head and shoulders above the rest of the other candidates. And let me let you in on a little secret. For those of you who are going into full-time ministry, they are a lot less worried with your fabricated accomplishments, right, than they are with the way that you make them feel. A lot of times people want to put on their resume all of these accomplishments. I did the same thing. I started out, I listed out all of these different things that I was a part of. Event after event. How many people were at these events, all the rest of it. And then it finally got to the point where I was like, none of this matters. What matters is, what is the giftings that God has given me, and how can I benefit this organization? And I put that on the resume. And so they're a lot less worried with your head knowledge and fabricated accomplishments. They're more concerned with the way that you make them feel. Under that whole idea of first impressions, being that time is of the essence and first impressions are long lasting, you need to make sure that every moment that you have with other staff members is a positive one. Every positive impression creates momentum for you to create buy-in with others. This is something that I live by. If I told you, you're all CHC students coming into this first year of ministry, you have no idea what this church is about, you have no idea who Pastor Danny is, and I'm introducing you guys on your orientation day, and I come in and I say, hey guys, we're about to introduce Pastor Danny. He kind of leads up all of CHC. Man, he's just, you guys smile, give him a shot, but he's not the best. The other people are actually going to be leading this thing. They're the ones who really are going to help you along your ministry journey. Pastor Danny's not that guy, but here he is. All right, come on, everybody, Pastor Danny. You know what I mean? What would that make you feel like? You would already have this preconceived idea that Pastor Danny sucks. What am I going to learn from this guy? You know what I mean? And you've never met him. But what if I told you, hey, Pastor Danny leads this ministry. He is incredible. In fact, he's an angel. Pastor Danny is an angel, literally an angel. This dude, man, he takes time with every single one of our students. He loves them. He's going to work with you. He's going to figure out what your potential is, and he's going to call it out in you. You've never met him. All of a sudden, when Pastor Danny comes up, what is your perspective of Pastor Danny now? It's this idea that Pastor Danny is an angel. He's an angel. You know what I mean? And he really is. He really is an angel, if you didn't know that. But it's this idea that when you start creating momentum with people, you create buy-in with their realm of influence. Okay, so that means, man, you make it to the job interview. You get there and you're actually going through the different rounds of interviews, whatever that looks like. From the admin who schedules you to maybe fly out there or wherever it is that you're going, or who sets up the meetings, you need to make sure that every encounter that you have with people is a good one. Because what happens is all of a sudden, Michelle Marks, who sends me an email and says, hey, we want to fly you out here, we want to set up an interview, blah, blah, blah. From that moment, I'm going, okay, I'm going to make the best impression that I can possibly make. That's what happens is, then I call Michelle on the phone, we talk, we have a great conversation. I promise you, she went back and said, man, I really like this guy. Like, he was so kind, he was so nice. Anytime I've emailed him, he's responded very quickly. Like, this dude, I like him a lot. Then all of a sudden, the friends of Michelle start hearing, I like this guy, I like this guy. And then you meet them and you have a good encounter with them, and the momentum just keeps going and going and going. There's a fine line between manipulation and understanding like what you're walking into, because you can use that to manipulate people and you can make them like you, and then 2 months, 3 months in, if that's not the person that you are all the time, they're going to see straight through that. And now all of a sudden, the positive influence that you made on their life and on them becomes really negative really fast, and you can't undo that, or it becomes really hard to undo. So that's why I say it's really important today to make sure that you're living this authentic, genuine life now, and let it be the person that you are today long before you ever step foot at a job interview, right? So, perfect. Another question that you need to ask yourself is, am I being genuine? Am I being genuine? If you wait until you get hired onto a staff to start creating a good reputation, you've waited way too long. Because reputation has a way of following you wherever you go. Wherever you go. That could be even in the references that you put on your resume, right? So they're going to call, they're going to say, hey, Jordy, how's Christian? Man, Christian is a fabulous, fantastic guy. I love Christian. Man, I think he's going to do a great job for your ministry. Right? And it's this idea, like, I'm saying the right words, but people can feel the tension beneath the words. But if I really have a relationship, and Christian is this authentic, genuine guy, and we have a relationship, I'm going to be like, no, this dude is the guy that you need to hire. Like, I wish that we could hire him here. People read into that. Reputation is more than just a face-to-face conversation with people. It follows you wherever you go, and the references that you have, and then also in the way that you see yourself. The way that you view yourself will determine the way that others perceive you. The way that you view yourself is the way that others will perceive you. And if you aren't being genuine, you can write this down because it's really good. If you aren't being genuine, you're being fake. And fake people don't make positive impressions. Genuine people do. Fake people don't make positive impressions. Genuine people do. It used to be in church, like this idea of if you want healthy ministry, it has nothing to do with the fame that you have, right? It has nothing to do with the success that you have. It has everything to do with the behind the scenes, brother. Like, you need to make sure that you're stacking chairs yourself. It's all of this. But we live in a day and age, especially in ministry, where it's about the leather jacket that you wear, right? It's about the cool shoes that you have. It's about the people that you associate yourself with. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. Like, I like cool clothes and fashion just as much as the next guy. But when your idea of fashion becomes your personality and who you are, there's something really wrong with that. If you have this idea of what you're supposed to be, kind of like these Instagram pastors that we all are aware of, you were never supposed to fit the image of someone else. Figure out how to make the most of the opportunity that you have been given and be 100% real. If you find yourself completely struggling with comparing yourself to others, maybe you need to delete social media, right? Maybe you need to stop worrying about what everybody else is doing and find your own voice. I was a student pastor for 4 years. Had no idea what I was doing. My uncle was the pastor. He came to me. Me and my wife were actually planning on going to Scotland to help a church plant out there. And that was the cool thing. And so my pastor came to us and said, hey, our youth pastor's leaving. We really think that you should take over the student ministry. This was my first ministry job outside of ministry school. And I thought, man, like, this sounds great. This sounds awesome, but I really want to go do this other thing. He said, don't give me an answer. Pray about it and come back to me in a week and let me know your answer. So me and Lindsay, we weren't married at the time. We were engaged, about to be married. And we prayed about it and really felt like God was leading us to take over the student ministry. Get into student ministry in 2010. And I had this idea, and my pastor told me, who was my uncle, he said, dude, I'm going to work with you. Like every week for as long as you need, we're going to meet. And we're going to talk about the ins and outs of leadership structure, the ins and outs of how to write a message, how to do small groups, like the whole 9 yards. Well, that lasted for literally about a month, maybe 2 months. And then it was done. And then it was like, here you go, buddy, sink or swim, like figure it out. And I was sank a lot of the time. And during that first year, like a lot of crazy things happened that we won't get into right now. But it was the toughest, hardest year of my life. Couple that with it's my first ministry job, and we have about 150 students that we're having to figure out what to do with to help them along in their spiritual journey. And so what I immediately started doing was I would get on these podcasts. I would listen to Judah Smith. He's my boy. I love him. I would listen to Carl Lentz. I would listen to Rich Wilkerson Jr. And what happened was every time I got on the stage, none of my students knew who they were going to get that night. It might be T.D. Jakes, it might be Stephen Furtick, it might be Judah Smith, but they never heard me, and I never found my voice because I was too busy listening to the voice of other people. And I began to sound like them. And again, there's nothing wrong with picking things from other people and attributes of other people and applying that to your life. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, if that becomes who you are, if they become who you are, you're not living the life that God designed you to live. And so I say all of that to say, God doesn't need you to wear a black leather jacket. Hear me on this. Like, God doesn't need you to look like someone else and sound like someone else to do effective ministry or to be effective in the workplace. He doesn't need you to be anybody other than yourself. In fact, He uniquely designed you in such a way that you would fulfill the purposes of Him. And if you're acting and being like someone else, you'll never fulfill those purposes. So that is the main point of this talk today, is be you, be real. He could use a donkey. God used a donkey. He wasn't wearing this like cool black leather jacket. Like, he was a donkey. He wasn't the hippest donkey. He was a donkey, and God used him. God used him to fulfill His purposes. God will use you if you are authentically you. I'll never forget, in high school, I was homeschooled from 2nd grade all the way up until 9th. And so my dad, he traveled around with his business, and me and my brother and my mom and my dad packed up in a travel trailer, and we lived all over the East Coast. And so, you know, the stigma of homeschool students, I was that kid for those years of my life. I feel you. Come back to Lafayette, Louisiana when I was 13 years old, and my mom and dad put us in public school. The public school that I went to was the most ghetto school that I have ever seen in my life. It was in the hometown of where we were living. And so I step on to school. It's called Karen Crow High School. And I step on, and man, it was like gold chains. It was baggy tees. It was Air Force Ones were huge back then, right? And so here I am, you think I'm skinny now, like I was really skinny back then, and I was trying to figure out who I was. It was just a mess. And so I get in, that was also around the time that Hurricane Katrina happened. So all the kids from New Orleans came into our public high schools, and now all of a sudden all these gangs started forming, and I think it was like the first or second month of school, these 20 guys jumped this one kid. Principal comes out, police officers come out. They ended up knocking our principal out. Like, it was crazy. Like, it was outrageous. I say all of that to say, I'm in this identity crisis. Who am I? Who am I going to be? I see the cool kids in school. I see how they dress, so I'm just going to try to fit into that. So I go to the store. I convince my parents to buy me a gold chain, a tall tee, Air Force Ones, and I went to school, and man, it was the most awkward thing ever. Awkward thing. It was my freshman year. I tried to delete every single picture that I found along the way. But I joined the drum line that year. And so imagine drumline guy, band guy meets like whoever this is over here. And so I played the snare, and we had this drumline piece called solo. And so it was this cadence where the whole drum line would start playing. And then for 4 measures, you had a solo that you got to do whatever you wanted. Our band was really good, better than our football team. And so anytime the drum line would start playing, the whole crowd would stop focusing on the football team and they would start focusing on us. So we had everybody's attention. Started doing the solo. Well, I had practiced because it was my turn this week to do my solo. And they gave me 4 bars, man. And my goal was I was going to play this drum beat. And then at the end, I was going to take my drum off, set it down, and you guys remember the Harlem Shake? So I was going to do the Harlem Shake, right? Because that's cool. And I'm going to set my drum down, do the Harlem Shake, well, throw my stick up, do the Harlem Shake, catch my stick, put my drum back on. And it was in my mind, like, they're going to like lift me up on their shoulders, march me around school. It's going to be the highlight of our year. I take my drum off, go to do the Harlem Shake, overcorrected, fall over my drums into the bleachers. Everybody's laughing. Like, I am the laughing stock of the school. It was terrible. I'm beat red. It was hideous. It was hideous. Hideous. I say that to say all I was doing was copying all of the other people around me, right? I was just copying them, doing what they did, listening to the same music as them, and I was just copying what they were doing. And do you know what happens when you make a copy of an original? It becomes distorted a little bit, right? But what happens when you make a copy of a copy? It gets even more distorted, more distorted, more distorted. Then if you make the copy of the copy, it distorts even further. So I say this to say, don't distort the image of God by trying to copy the image of someone else. The Bible says that God made you in his image. By reflecting the image of God, you are able to show those around you the embodiment of authenticity itself. The world doesn't need to see another distorted copy of someone else. They need the authentic you. Let me say it again. They need the authentic you. The world needs the authentic you because we live in a society where no one is authentic. And all of a sudden, now the cool kids are the people who are genuine and authentic. Be that person. Ephesians 4:20 and 25 says, that, however, is not the way of life that you have learned to live. So he's talking about immorality and basically when you didn't know Christ, your life before Christ was just jacked up and messed up. But he says, this, however, is not the way that you have learned to live. When you heard about Christ and were taught in him in accordance with the truth that is in Jesus, you were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off the old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. To put off falsehood, to put off this idea that you are someone else that you're not. Get rid of that because God made you, to be unique, he created you in his image. The other thing that I would say is this: learn how to embrace what makes you unique and lean into that while also embracing the new culture that you found yourself in. Learn how to embrace what makes you unique and lean into that while also embracing the new culture that you found yourself in. I told you I was in student ministry for 4 years. And again, it was terrible. My church that I was a part of, and I don't want to bash my church by any means. We did a lot of great things. But this church was specifically focused on numbers. The only time that I got talked to about, what was going on in our ministry was when church metrics began to drop. And it was the conversation was, hey buddy, your numbers are dropping. What's going on? Talk to me a little bit about that. Like nothing to do with anything else that's positive that's happening. It was always about numbers dropping. And it was also all about the excellence on the weekend, which is great. I think that weekends should be excellent. But in my mind, if I want to be successful at this church, the culture of this church says, have large numbers and have successful weekend experiences. So what did I do? Here I am, a person who genuinely loves people and wants to walk through the discipleship process of people, put that aside, and I began to do what the culture of the church that I was in was doing, which was stage design. I actually legitimately love this idea and concept of stage design, but it became obsessive to where I wouldn't even write my messages until like the day of I was supposed to be preaching, like literally an hour before I'm going up. I'm like typing stuff out, like trying to hopefully it comes across, because I've been setting up the stage design the whole week. And I found this thing called projector mapping. Anybody ever heard of that? It's this idea of like you can put a projector on a wall and then you can map it out in Photoshop, and then you can create videos to where it will only go on this specific map that you've put it on. I'd have to show you to be able to articulate that well. But I say all that to say, dude, the experience was incredible. It was amazing. It was awesome. But our numbers weren't growing, and people weren't growing in their spiritual journey because I was so focused on all of the things that didn't matter that I didn't get to do the thing that God had gifted me to do, that I didn't get to do. And also that drained me. So I focused on stage design, big events. And so that was 3 years in, and then I was like, man, I can't keep doing this, so I've got to change something. Me and Lindsay talked about it, and it was, what do you love to do? Well, I love people, and I love groups. I love being in small groups. So we added small groups into the mix, and all of a sudden, it was this like relief that I don't have to do that anymore. I can do what God has gifted me to do, which is to be with students, to be with people. And our numbers started growing, people started growing in their faith. It was incredible. I focused so much of my time and energy in trying to fit into the culture that I wasn't doing what I was gifted to do. So remember this, if you find yourself in that place, and maybe you're in that place today, remember this. There's a reason why you got invited to the table. There's a reason why they invited you to be a part of whatever ministry it is, whatever job it is, and rest in that. Take comfort in that reality that you were invited to the table, which means that you're valued at the table and you add value to the table, right? They value your opinion. They value your giftings, your abilities. Rest in that and don't try to be someone that you're not. Once you realize that you're valued and you add value, then ask yourself this question. What do I possess that will benefit the organization? What do I possess that will benefit the organization? Once you figure that out, give yourself permission to do that on a regular basis. One of the kind of unique giftings that I feel like I have is I have this ability, like when I'm talking to people, it could be the first time that I ever meet them. There's this idea that people feel like they know me and have known me for their entire lives, right? Lean into that. Don't manipulate whatever the gifting is. And I had to learn that. Like, don't manipulate the gifts that God's given me, but lean into that and use that as a tool to help them along in their spiritual journey. Because all of a sudden, what I noticed is people started opening up to me a lot more quickly than they would to other people. So what is the gift that you possess that only you have, that only you can do? Figure that out and give yourself permission to do that on a regular basis. And then the last thing is understand that everyone is significant. Everyone is significant. When first joining an organization or a church or ministry, most people try their hardest to rub elbows with the top dogs, with the pastor, with the board members, with the influential people within the ministry, or the owner, or whatever it may be in your case. There's nothing wrong with getting around the executive teams. The problem occurs when you treat those in power with greater respect than you treat those that have nothing to contribute to your success. In fact, the majority of the time, your character is shown greatest in the way that you treat those who have nothing to contribute to your success. I was reading the parable of the sower the other day, and anytime that I've ever read that or heard about it, someone preaching on it, it was always, man, in this parable, there was the thorny bushes, there was the rocky soil, and then there was the good soil, right? And I was reading it, and then I felt like God reminded me that this was never the parable of the thorny bushes, of the rocky soil, or the good soil. It was always about the parable of the sower. And the reality is that the sower spread seed on the thorny bushes, on the rocky road and on the good soil. So our job is not to determine who is adequate enough for us to give our best to. Well, our job is to give our best to every single person that we come in contact with. Every single person that we come in contact with, regardless of who they are, regardless if they contribute to your success or not, our job is to give them our very best in everything that we do. So I'll let you guys go with this. Wow, 41 minutes. Don't settle for a subpar life that you were never intended to live. Live the fully alive life that God mapped out for you from the beginning. And don't wait to start living a life of authenticity when you land the job, because today starts that process. I'm going to pray for you. God, thank you for every person in this room. Lord, you know exactly what you have for them after this season of ministry, after this season of learning. And God, I pray that wherever they find themselves, they would find themselves, being the person that you created them to be. That they would be authentic, that they would be real, and that would start today. That when we leave this room, that God, we would start learning what it means to be the people that you've created us to be, to operate in the gifts that you've given us, and to not try and be someone that we were never meant to be. God, I thank you for every single one of them. I thank you for their future. I pray that you would bless that future, bless them. God, allow us to be the genuine people that you want us to be. In the name of Jesus, amen.